Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to be joined by Tony Sottile of Sottile and Barilli Attorneys at Law. Tony, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Jamie. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. No, I'm really excited to dive in. As we briefly mentioned before we hit record, I don't know your entire story, and I'm very excited to learn more about it. And but for the listener out there, excuse me, I do work with Tony. We use Tony in my own Tony's firm, I should say, in my own professional life. So I can vouch for the professional side of things with Tony, but we'll dive into that later. Tony, for the listener, I'll stop rambling. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you're up to today?
So my name is Tony Sottile. Currently today, I co-run a law firm with my business partner and law partner, Franco Barilli. We practice primarily out of the state of Ohio. I'm in our Cincinnati office and Franco's in our Cleveland office. But we do practice in many states: Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, and Alabama. And we have offices, two offices in Ohio, one in Indiana and one in Illinois. We do a variety of other states for a lot of bankruptcy matters, and then we do offer nationwide bankruptcy coverage for a variety of matters in bankruptcy. But we can get to all that later on, and you can check out our website and see those kinds of things on there. But I think we're here to kind of talk about how we got to this point, and I'm interested in talking about that.
Absolutely. So we will dive into your more of what your firm does, and because I'm actually curious to know a little bit more of how things are split up and how things work. But let's dive into your personal backstory, Tony. And we can certainly focus on your growth as an entrepreneur. The listener out there they're mostly entrepreneurs, and so we'll talk some about your actual practice and what that focuses on, but a lot about your entrepreneurial journey as well as your personal journey. So where should we start? Where do you want to start things off as far as your background?
Well, let's go back to, I don't have a complicated childhood. My parents are together. They've always been together. I still have them both. They live about 15 minutes from my house. We had a great childhood. I'm the oldest of three. My father worked at General Electric for 45 years, and my mom stayed at home as long as she could until all of our school fees and registration costs kind of made a single income house difficult to raise two boys and a girl in. And mom went back to work at that point. But by then I was old enough to kind of come home and take care of myself late in the afternoon and take care of my brother and whatnot, and my sister eventually. But I kind of got into entrepreneurialism probably when I was a teenager, actually. I was a swimming lesson instructor.
Okay.
I was never on a swim team, but I was kind of a trained swimmer, just with different classes at YMCA's and organizations like that. Sure. And I enjoyed swimming, not competitively. Again, we weren't competitive swimmers, but I was able to kind of utilize that in different pools in my area, whether it was a neighborhood pool or a private backyard pool. And, people would say, "Hey, can you come teach my kids? Can you come teach my kids?" And after a few months of doing this, during one summer, I kind of thought, what? I think I can make a bit of a business out of this.
I love it.
And, it's funny. I printed up flyers. I had schedules. I had minimums for private pools. So you had to have a certain number of people at that pool for me to travel to your house to teach, your children or some neighbor children swimming lessons. And I was able to do that through the, through the YMCA and through different organizations that kind of certified that I was able to do that. And that was kind of my start, out of the typical grass cutting, babysitting, stuff like that. That was kind of boring for me growing up. I wasn't really too interested in that. Yeah. That's kind of where I got to start.
Yeah, no, so that's interesting because I know for myself, I've looked back and I never thought of it at the time. I didn't realize, oh, you're an entrepreneur. I wasn't saying that to myself, but looking back, I did have I did personal training, which I just thought of because of what you just talked about with the swimming lessons, essentially the same type thing. And then, I did have a grass cutting business and things like that. And just, I think I've always had that sort of bent toward being an entrepreneur. And it sounds like you have as well. So kind of walk us through your entrepreneurial journey from that point up until becoming an attorney and when things kind of got real for you, if you will.
Sure. So I think back then, I mean, and even going further back than that, I was a kid on a snow day that would love snow days. I would line up cleaning driveways the night before we knew we would have no school. So I mean, I wasn't interested in sledding. I wasn't interested in playing. I was interested in lining up as many driveways as I could. And I'd make assurances that they'd be plowed, they'd be, shoveled before somebody went to work that morning. And, I had my brother help and paid my brother. And it just goes back that much further.
Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think that was? In other words, did you wanted the extra spending money? You wanted security? You wanted to prove yourself why did you have that drive?
It's as cut and dry as I just want a little spending money.
Okay.
My parents, raised us raised us very fiscally minded. And
Sure.
My mom would always say, I can buy you a pair of shoes for $20. If you want your Nikes and they're $60, you've got to come up with the other 40. I can buy you tough skins at Sears for $15. If you want your Levi's, those are $30. You're going to have to come up with the other 15. So
sure.
I was always interested in having those kinds of things. But it really wasn't so much for the material aspect of that. Now that I'm an adult and I can look back, I think it was more for, being able to do something like that. I took pride in how I looked. I took pride in being able to do those things, but it really was more that I could accomplish a goal. My goal was, this item or this trinket or this pack of baseball cards. And in order to get there, I had to earn my money to get there. Mm-hmm. And that was, I really think that really kind of formed a good solid foundation for me in what I thought was just school. I felt like, school mattered more to me. I paid for school. I worked in the summers. I worked throughout school. And that's kind of what I thought that all of that work that I did as a preteen and a teenager, doing those entrepreneurial things, I felt like that was what always laid the groundwork for me to have to be able to do that in school and pay for my school. And I mean, I took out loans and everything, but you asked kind of how that relates to becoming a lawyer. So
yeah, exactly.
I went straight from high school to college to law school, graduated law school and got a job. Okay. So this is just after 9/11. The economy's kind of down some.
Sure.
They're no longer giving away those high paying jobs that they were giving away to anybody who graduated law school. So I took a job, wasn't the greatest job in the world. It was doing bankruptcy work for a nationwide firm that did consumer bankruptcy. So I represented consumers who filed bankruptcy.
Okay.
I wanted something that I could hit the ground running in. I didn't want to carry someone else's briefcase. I wanted interaction with clients. I wanted interaction with the court. I wanted to get my name out there, my ticket out there.
Sure.
It was not going well. After about 2 or 3 years, I was struggling. I didn't like it. I felt like I needed to leave, but keep in mind that the only thing I knew growing up was my dad, who went to work for 45 years at General Electric. And most of those 45 years were not good. And I remember him coming home and, surviving layoffs and surviving friends getting laid off. And that's what I knew. I knew, well, that's just what you do. You just keep your nose down.
Yeah.
Do your work.
You just continue to grind, right? Yeah. I mean, I think that's obviously nowadays it's people jump ship left and right. Let's be honest, with different career. And I don't say that to blame them necessarily. I just think it's a lot more common that people change career choices and paths a lot more frequently now. But that is absolutely back, you and I are about the same age. And so this was 20 years ago, we're talking at this point.
Yes, it was.
And so, at that point, it wasn't very common to just change jobs and change careers, let alone jobs within every couple of years. So when to know, that's a very individual thing, I think, as far as knowing, am I being stupid by continuing, to be stubborn and continuing down this path versus, hey, there are plenty of signs here that I'm not happy. This isn't my calling. This isn't the right thing for me to do. How did you go through that mentally at that point?
It was tough because again, I had married my wife at that point. I met and married my wife while I was working at that first job, and we were, both still kind of starting out. She had a job, very entry level kind of job at what was she doing back then? She was doing I can't remember what she was doing, just entry level business. I mean, this was low end, first job out of college for her. Kind of work, and it was a big step for for us to get married and combine two small incomes to a medium kind of income, and not knowing kind of what was next if I didn't want to work at that job anymore, it was a little scary for us. So I put feelers out there, and I ended up switching from representing consumers in bankruptcy work to representing creditors in bankruptcy work, and I made that move in about 2006. I kind of jumped the sides of the aisle in the courtroom. And that's where I've been ever since.
Okay, got it. So for the listener out there who's unfamiliar entirely with what you're talking about, the creditor, like you mentioned, is someone who files for bankruptcy. I think you mentioned Chapter 7 and 13 were the primary chapters. So what previously, what was your typical client profile before you switched over to the other team, if you will?
Sure. So my first kinds of clients were you and me. My first clients were consumers, general everyday people that usually had something bad happen to them. So usually it was a loss of a job, a sick child, sick spouse, medical bills. Things like that would cause somebody to have financial difficulties and to the point where they would need to file bankruptcy, Chapter 7, Chapter 15 kind of bankruptcy. So that was my first foray into the legal world.
Yep. And then when you switched over, then what was the avatar of your, I guess, what does that continue to be at this point?
Sure. So then when I switched sides, I then began representing the creditors of the people that I used to represent. Now, obviously, I couldn't represent creditors in those cases anymore because I can't represent both sides in the same case, kind of a thing. So eventually those cases all went away, and I was able to represent just solely creditors. So we're talking about banks, mortgage companies, auto lenders, landlords, really anybody that has money owed to them from somebody else. That became my client after my first job.
And again, this was all bankruptcy focused, right? It wasn't like foreclosure or anything like that at that point.
I was strictly a bankruptcy guy.
Yeah. Got it. And again, so it's not like you were at 10 years old, said, I want to be a bankruptcy attorney. It was more just one thing led to another, and you kind of became an expert in that field. And so then, 2006, you mentioned, how long did you were working for someone else at that point, right?
Correct.
Okay. So how long did you do that for?
I did that. So I went from a big nationwide firm representing just consumers in bankruptcy to a more regional firm out of Cincinnati representing creditors in bankruptcy. Now that firm did foreclosures, bankruptcies, several other different areas of law, but I stuck to bankruptcy, and I was there for about 3 years. And just kind of, again, I grew lost. I grew, I felt like my voice wasn't heard. I felt like my work wasn't being appreciated. Not necessarily monetarily. I was okay in my monetarily, but my opinion didn't matter. My wants and desires didn't matter. So long as the owners, were met, then that was good enough for the firm, and that's fine. That's just fine. And from there to 2 other firms just like that, and I'd fizzle out, after a brief honeymoon period of, Tony's the new guy, he's going to do this, he's going to do that, and it would fizzle out, and I would get in a funk very easily.
I can relate, and I think a lot of our listeners can relate. I worked for 7 years at the Department of Defense full-time, and then 7 years part-time. And after, 5 or 6 years of full-time work there, it's Groundhog Day. It's the same commute every day. It's, it's not that speaking for myself, it's not that I was entirely miserable, meaning, life has no meaning, but it had to have more meaning. I just wasn't having the impact or the fulfillment that I knew I could have.
Perfect word, fulfillment. Perfect.
sounds like, you were doing fine. It's not like life was awful, but you knew there was more. So talk to kind of the mindset there as far as moving toward creating. You'd been an entrepreneur years prior
Yeah.
on a lesser scale than you are now. And so how did your mindset change? How did your perspective, your priorities, what changed at that point mentally for you?
Sure. So I didn't really fancy myself an entrepreneur back when I was talking about shoveling driveways and teaching swimming lessons. I was just a kid with a plan and who wanted some money in his wallet. I mean, I
Sure.
didn't really even know what that word entrepreneurial was.
Yeah.
And I met Franco Barilli, my current law partner, at a
Yep.
job that I had before my last job. So
Okay.
we both kind of left that job. And Franco grew up in a very entrepreneurial household.
Okay.
And would always tell me, man, you can do this yourself. You can do this yourself. You don't have to be miserable. You don't have to be unhappy.
Yep.
And I was scared. I was, there's a lot of peace in a 9 to 5 working for somebody else on that same paycheck, whatever
Sure.
that paycheck is, counting on that same paycheck every couple of Fridays. And there's a lot of peace in that. And, my wife didn't have kids. It was just her and I, and we were just kind of working our way up through our careers, and we were very comfortable. I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of adversity, up to this point. Things were good. We bought a house, we had cars, we were taking trips together. But I just was completely, thoroughly, disgustingly unfulfilled, working for other people. Many of them were wonderful people to work for and with, but yeah, Franco, my business partner now, would always tell me, man, you can do this yourself. You can do this yourself. And finally I said, okay, I'm going to do this myself.
So what was Franco's position at that point? Had he done it himself already?
So he had done it himself.
Okay.
He had done strictly collections work and some kind of business transaction work for himself.
Okay.
After working for some other firms as well.
Sure.
So he had done it for himself for a while, and then he joined a firm for that consistent income, probably.
Sure. That's stability and consistency. Yeah.
And that's where he and I met. He and I met at that firm.
Got it.
Stayed in touch. He left there to go back out on his own.
Okay.
I left there just trying to chase happiness at someone else's firm. And of course, within months at that firm, it just wasn't right.
Sure.
Stayed in touch with Franco, and that's kind of when we kind of had the idea of, well, I'm going to branch out on my own. Franco's going to stay on his own, and we'll just kind of cross refer work to one another. And that scared the daylights out of me. I do bankruptcy work. It's what I do. It's what I know. It's what I'm comfortable with. And the specter of doing this for myself was really too much. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a whole different beast, whether you're talking about being an attorney or not. As creating a business is a separate thing than having being a professional for someone else. So, and then what happened from there? How did you join together?
Sure. So it took a lot of conversations. It took getting our wives involved to understand. I think Franco had some concerns about having a partner again. I think he had some difficulties doing those kinds of things in the past, and he was very comfortable being on his own. I wasn't comfortable being on my own. I wanted to be with somebody that I could count on, that I could trust, that could trust me, and that I could grow business with.
Got it.
That ancillary law practice that mine would fit in with, that we could bring other things to the table, like, some business acumen, some accounting acumen that I didn't really possess at the time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I'd love to touch on that a bit. Because I know you started Sottile and Barilli in 2015.
Correct.
So you've been at it for coming up on 8 years now, maybe more than 8 years.
It'll be 8 years in April. 8 years next month.
Yeah. All right. So right about 8 years when this comes out. So talk for the listener out there, because I've been through some of this myself, as far as how to choose a business partner, and it doesn't always, a lot of times it's organic. It's not necessarily, hey, I need to choose a business partner. Let me put out an ad for a business partner and interview people. You might not even know you have a need for a business partner. And then you realize I could be partners with this person. So there's no one size fits all answer or way to go about it, but what would you tell the kind of budding entrepreneur out there, or someone who is an entrepreneur who may be looking to partner with someone else, not on a deal, but on a business venture? Lessons you've learned or lessons that, Franco has learned. How can you speak to the listener out there?
Sure. Well, I really can only speak to myself about this. I've only had
Sure.
one business partner, and it's
Okay.
only been Franco. And so far as I'm concerned, it will forever only be Franco.
Got it.
We mesh extremely well.
Nice.
His weaknesses are my strengths are his weaknesses.
Yep.
I bet we agree on, honestly, I bet we agree on 95% of the things we do. And then
Okay.
the 5%, most of those, if he's adamant about something, good, let's do it. If I'm adamant about something and he's not,
Sure.
good, let's do it my way.
Yeah.
He trusts me, I trust him. I mean, there's only a few
Yep.
people in this world that if they told me to jump, I jump and on the way up. And for me to have that trust in somebody, and I
Sure.
feel he would say the same thing,
Sure.
is paramount to me. I mean, I trust Franco with my life in many ways.
Yeah.
And that trust is not easy to come by. It's
Sure.
hard to find. I lucked out big time.
Got it. So it sounds like you were able to assuage his fears, I guess, as
Yes.
far as his, his concerns and from that had come out of having, it sounds like, maybe some bad partnerships previously, but I love it. It's awesome. So, walk us through from 2015 through today. What's the growth of your business looked like? And I know you've brought on a lot more partners. Is that to grow the firm? Is that right?
So yes, so we started with just Franco and I.
Yep.
He was in a small office. I bet it was maybe 250 square feet.
Okay.
Small
Yep.
office. I was out of my office in my house, and we started April 20th of 2015. And by that summer, we had both hired multiple people to help with our kind of growing offices. I
Mhm.
think Franco had already moved into a larger office at that point. I was on the hunt for office space, and it really just grew from there. It grew from just
Mhm.
doing state court collection work and bankruptcy work. So
Mhm.
bankruptcy work's all federal, collection work's all state court work.
Mhm.
And we're just doing those two things we had clients that wanted us to start doing foreclosure work, which Franco and I had both done in the past and kind of knew enough to be dangerous on. So we took a couple of months worth of foreclosure work from a client and went, okay, we need to get some help on this. So that started, a third practice group for us. We had bankruptcy, we had collection. Foreclosure kind of started that third practice group for us.
Got it.
And, it's just been steady growth since then. So
Okay.
started with just the two of us and growing to, we have 13 attorneys at this point, and
Mhm.
I'd say about 25, 28 support staff people, ranging from paralegals to billing people to human resource people. We have IT folks that we contract with. We've got vendors
Mhm.
that we associate with now that we count on to provide services for us. We went from, just a handful of 2 or 3 states to, multiple states.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah,
So it sounds like it's been relatively organic. You kind of take it one
yes,
step at a time. You
yes.
didn't necessarily have a 10, 20-year plan with exactly how this firm's going to turn out. Is that fair to say?
5-day plan. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, I think, like everything,
Yeah.
we thought very small with this. I mean, this wasn't
Mhm.
something that, we just wanted to make enough to feed our families and have a nice little life
Sure.
and have that respect that he and I both craved from previous employers
Yeah.
and previous jobs. And, to be able to build that, we took what we didn't like at other places and wanted to make sure that we corrected those things
Sure.
at Sottile and Beryllium. We wanted to make sure that we provided a platform for our attorneys to speak up and our staff to speak up from the ground up. I mean, on your first day, if you come up with an idea, we're nimble, we're small. Let's put that idea in practice. Let's give it a try.
Sure.
We're not old stodgy people. We're not recalcitrant to change. I mean, we're we want to try these things, you know. And when Frank was telling me about, you know, starting a firm together, I'm like, I have no concept of entrepreneurialism. I've never done it before. And I'm telling people this, and they're looking at me like, but you've always been entrepreneurial. You did swimming lessons, you lined up snow removal jobs, you babysat, you circulated flyers to cut grass, you paid your dad for the gas in the mower. You know, I mean, you had that spirit your whole life. You just really know it.
Well, a lot of times it's other people can see the strengths in us more than we can ourselves. So tell me this, do you work harder now than you did when you were working for someone else?
I would say actually no to that.
Okay.
We have in the past,
sure.
But we've made it kind of our process here to hire people that are smarter than us. Frank and I, we definitely do not want to be, nor are we the smartest people in any room that we're in our offices. You know, we want people that can, you know, just blow us out of the water with their, you know, reciting of code and case law and you know, we want to get out of the way and let the smart people in the room have a voice.
That makes a lot of sense. So how about the first few years? I mean, you said you were there periods of time where you really had to put your nose to the grindstone, so to speak, 20-hour days?
20-hour days.
So speak to the entrepreneur as far as, you know, I guess let me phrase it like this. I'll ask this first. Would you recommend, and we know it's not one size fits all, every situation is different. So we'll get the attorney caveats out of the way, right? But no, but would you recommend somebody who's thinking about starting their own business, should they create a side hustle, or should they kind of just jump in 2 feet, you know, head first and just go for it?
Okay. And that's a great question. I did not have a whole lot of responsibility when I made this move. I was married. My wife was working. She had a very good job. She could carry the health insurance. She could carry mortgage payments. You know, we had done some planning, so we were putting money away. It was very easy for me to literally turn off one switch and turn on a new switch.
Got it.
Knowing full well that, you know, we were going to give it a year or so, and if it didn't work, I was just
going to get another job. Sure. Absolutely.
But I think that's not the average person. I think the average person has a lot more going on, you know, when they're thinking about making that move. So it depends on what you're looking at doing. But starting as more of a side hustle, you can't really do that in law, right? So you
that's true.
You know, serve two kind of firms as an attorney. There's boiling it down. That's not easy to do.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. So obviously it does depend on everyone's situation and goals. So it sounds like you did really have to bust your butts for a few years there, and then you were able to grow your team, and now you've got, not that you're just sitting on the beach all day long, but sounds like you've got systems and people in place to kind of really lift you all to the next level.
Yes.
Where would you say you're headed in the next few years with the firm?
Our mission now is just continued steady growth. That will probably involve expansion in terms of staffing. I don't know if that involves expansion in terms of additional states of representation. But Alabama is a new state for us, for example, and the reason we have Alabama is because we brought on an attorney about a year ago who had an Alabama license and some contacts that could provide us work in Alabama. So
is that Dennis?
That's Dennis Ferguson. He's one of our partners. He's a partner out of our Indianapolis office. I had
worked with him a little bit previously, and I was I thought that was nice work by Tony and Franco to get him on board. So
I've known Dennis for probably 15, 16 years. Dennis has 4 years of experience. He's exactly what we're interested in. Somebody with multiple years of experience working for other people that is just looking for that same amount of respect and say in a business or in a firm as Franco and I wanted. So the partners that we've brought on, they don't have to worry about the finances. They don't have to worry about making payroll and things like that. It's more of a title to them out of a respect factor for what they can bring to the table. And we've got senior attorneys, much the same thing. It's a respect thing here. It's this person's practiced for so long, knows so much, and is so important to us. We want to honor that. We want to give them that to the public.
Sure.
And that helps.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like you're very people focused, and I've gotten to know you from a distance a little bit over the years, and it just seems like, you and Franco both care a lot about your staff and your
Sure.
clients. So I think that's fantastic. So if you would, I know there was some fairly recent personal adversity, and I know it's not always easy to talk about, Tony, but I
Sure.
appreciate it if you could dive into that a little bit, and then I've got some other questions
Sure.
after that. But talk to us about kind of on the personal side, the adversity you've dealt with recently.
Sure, sure. So I've mentioned my wife a few times. She was crucial to my success, kind of going up in different firms, and always being my strongest cheerleader behind, over my shoulder, and kind of my chief counselor, my chief operating officer. I mean, she was always helping me with decisions and whatnot. And when she was 17, way before we got married late in our 20s. When she was 17, she was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh,
And
wow.
we knew that when we got married that we weren't going to be that couple that retired at 60 and walked along the beach for 20 years together. I mean, we knew that our time together was going to be short. We didn't know how short, we didn't know how long. That was, you can't help what you fall in love with. And
Sure.
I was willing to take on that responsibility. And was another reason why I was looking for something of my own. Was, I knew as she got older, and as I knew as she grew older, that we'd have issues that we would need to deal with. And when we started the firm, that was one of the reasons why we started the firm. Was I knew I would likely need significant time off for treatments and for operations and surgeries and whatnot over the next, we hoped many years.
Sure.
But she got pretty sick a couple of years ago, the summer of 2021. And it was unfortunately just kind of a spiral from there for her. And she lost her battle in November of last year. So we knew it was coming. That helped a tremendous amount, knowing several months in advance that there wasn't really any more that could be done. So we were able to grieve together. I was able to grieve my wife with my wife, the loss of my wife with my wife, which was a gift that was incredible.
Well, thank you. I mean, thank you for opening up about that. I know it's not easy to speak about, and again, that's what this show is all about. It's on the downside. It's very easy for me to pretend like, for one thing, to just gloss right over this adversity, like it's no big deal. We just talk about it, move on. That's not the approach we're trying to take here. But instead, we're trying to let the listener know that we all experience adversity in one way or another in life. And again, like we mentioned, it's often health or relationship. And in this case, those were both of those, right? Or financial or a combination thereof. And, I'm not going to pretend I know what that's like, but I appreciate you sharing it. And the fact that, you've obviously had massive growth on through your business and your career, since starting as a swim instructor, if you will, and then up until now. But that doesn't mean it's been a straight line to success, and it's always up and to the right without valleys. And so thank you for sharing that. I mean, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine in a way you were able to cherish the time that you spent together, and maybe even cherish your own just every day a little bit more than maybe you would have otherwise.
Jamie, most definitely. I mean, she worked for the firm. I mean, we spent 24 hours a day together. She was as much a part of this firm and the growth of the firm and a friend to everybody here. She hired most of the people that work out of our Cincinnati office. She had a hand in hiring most of the people that worked out of all of our offices.
Gotcha.
And she was able to see a lot of the successes that we had and help with the failures and help put policies in place to not have, bad things happen. My regret isn't really so much regret, but that she's not going to be able to see this all the way through,
Sure.
And that's upset to me. But
sure.
I'm sorry, but being surrounded by so many people that knew her is a blessing to me.
That's again, thank you for opening up. I do have some questions here, and
Sure.
some of these will kind of relate back to the personal side, and some will relate more to the business side. Um, what's one thing that people misunderstand about you?
So there's no two faces of Tony. And I think if people see me at conferences, or people see me on the street, or people see me really anywhere, what you see is what you get.
Mhm.
I might have maybe a bit more of a filter when I'm at work. But I'm not,
Sure.
I don't dress one way at work and another way on in my personal life. I talk the same, I sound the same. Again, language might be a little different, but other than that, what you see
Yeah,
is what you get with me. And
got it.
I think I'm a pretty genuine person in that regard.
Okay, I love it. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Ooh, wow, the coffee question. If I can have coffee with anybody,
They could
I think
still be alive today or not.
sure.
I mean,
I think I'd say my grandfather, my mom's dad, who
okay,
I knew for a while. He passed away when I was in fifth grade. He was the first person I knew to die.
okay,
And he gave he gave my grandmother and my mom and her sisters and brother a good life growing up.
sure.
I think he was at a steel mill or some kind of mill work, and
Hmm.
eventually later in life got the entrepreneurial bug, and he opened up a gift shop in a small town in North Jersey,
Oh,
and
cool.
had this entrepreneurial bug about him. And my mom would always kind of compare me to him
Mm,
and talk about what I'm doing versus what he did and how he started his business, and kind of our attitudes about work. And if you're going to have a business, be open, be available, be present,
mhm.
how you treat people, how you treat customers, how you treat your employees. And I
Sure.
would love to talk with him,
Yeah,
um, and have coffee with him to see if he's proud of what I've done and everything.
sure. No, I appreciate that answer. And I can vouch for your responsiveness and professionalism. And, from my perspective in working with you, it's top notch. So, I think he would be proud if I can, speak for him. If you were given $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with it?
I would keep one and give away nine.
Okay.
Um, I have grown very philanthropic as I've been able to.
Okay.
And I probably derive the most pleasure in life giving money away at this point. And this is small amounts. I mean, I'm
Sure.
by no means,
Yeah.
somebody you're going to see
Yeah.
on TV.
Yeah. We don't want your phone ringing for that reason, right?
No, no. I mean, we have some cherished charities that the
Yeah.
firm contributes to, that the Sottile family, holds near and dear, for a variety of other reasons, and
Nice.
being able to work with those organizations, not only in financial ways, but with my time as much as I can, I
Hmm.
thoroughly enjoy doing.
Love it. Speaking of your firm, what is one challenge that you're facing in your business right now?
Oh, so we always have regulatory challenges.
Mm,
So dealing with note buyers, dealing with institutional investors, dealing
yep.
with large banks. There's different regulations, all along the way, and they are always changing. And they change, depends on who's in the White House, depends on who controls Congress, depends on what banks are failing, and how places want to regulate those kinds of things, or organizations, what the CFPB wants to do, what
Hmm.
all these different governmental entities are doing, not only on the federal level, but state level, local levels.
Hmm.
Staying on top of all of those and being
Hmm.
able to, it's tough to stay a step ahead
Sure.
of them, but at
Yeah.
least staying on top of them is always going to be our biggest concern: compliance, regulatory compliance.
Sure. But it does lead to a little bit of job security too, doesn't it?
It does, it does, it does.
If that's your expertise.
We don't do much in terms of interpretation. So some people
Got it.
listening, probably have come to us with, hey, can I do X, Y, and Z? And
Yeah.
that's not us. We
Sure.
would always tell people, talk with regulatory counsel, talk to
Sure.
somebody else, who can help set you up that particular way. We
Sure.
can
That makes sense.
paperwork, we can get you set up as an LLC, we can do those kinds of things. But
Hmm.
when it comes time to setting up your note business, that's
Yeah.
not typically
Not
something
really
that.
your thing. Got it. Understood. What's one thing in your industry, just, one viewpoint maybe, in your field of expertise that almost no one agrees with you about?
Ooh,
Do you or Franco have any kind of not divergent, between the two of you, but does your firm have any kind of unique perspective or take on any hot button issues or anything like that?
not necessarily on hot button issues, but I will tell you that one of the reasons we started the firm was because we saw that the smaller investor, the onesie twosie note buyer investor,
Yep.
the people like that, they were so dramatically underrepresented by the firms that we had worked for in the past. Only because those firms specialized in high volume work from Bank of America and Chase and Ocwen and Nation Star, Mr. Cooper, and would build their firms around how those companies wanted them to, because they were sending them literally thousands of files a month. And the smaller investors, and I'm not talking necessarily just one or two filing, one or two, note kinds of people. I'm talking hundreds.
Right.
So these are by no means small businesses, but we always thought that they were underrepresented. And when we started the company, we wanted to make sure no matter how big we got, that we always had a place for the clients that got us our start, and for that size of investor.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a little different. Some firms that do what we do, they don't want that. They're not interested in that.
Sure. Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that's really my wheelhouse, and from as far as a note buyer perspective and note investor. And that's also the reason we started BiFi Loan Servicing, is, to meet the needs of similar type clientele, not the big hedge funds or big banks out there.
Right.
What's one occupation other than your own that you'd like to try?
That's a great one too. Wow. So let's see, what's another occupation? I can see myself branching out into other businesses, perhaps.
Okay.
I've learned things, good and bad. Not all of the things we've done here have worked. We've pivoted, we've adjusted. I think I've learned things that I'm not sure where they would translate to, but it might be interesting to be a consultant for other smaller businesses or other entrepreneurs.
Sure.
I think if I was able to do something like that, I'd almost be a mentor to people who were just as confused as I was. They weren't,
I hear you. Yeah.
But knew they weren't happy where they were.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate a lot to that. As much as I love managing our note funds and building the team and, working on note deals and individual deals, at the same time, I personally am a lot more, or I should say somewhat more excited recently about small business and just a lot of the principles and lessons that can apply to any type of entrepreneurial endeavor, or many at least. So I hear you on that. I think, so what would you say? What would you do differently maybe if you, not necessarily to the attorney side of things or the law specific side, but as far as building your business, what would you do differently if you had to do it over again?
Sure. What would I do differently? I would probably pay maybe a little bit more mind to growing the business a little faster. Maybe we thought a little too small at the beginning. I think we could have probably started a little bit bigger than we did, but we didn't know what we had, and as an attorney, you tell a client when you work for a firm, I'm leaving, will you come with me? You can't do that. You just have to rely on that relationship, and you have to leave. You have to leave that firm and say, hey, I'm over here now. Just cross your fingers and hope they come with you. And
absolutely.
I think that if we had to do it all over again, we might have had a little more confidence in who would come with us, and we might have started a little bit bigger. I don't know if we had any more ownership involved. Franco and I, we like keeping that between the two of us. But even now, I don't, it's rare that I'll answer a question that somebody asks, and they come to me with the questions, and I understand why people come to me with questions, but I will often pass that question on to one of our other attorneys here, because they know at this point better than I do. At this point, Franco and I have pivoted in many ways to business development and doing things like this with you, Jamie, and just kind of spreading the word maybe a little bit more about the firm, going to conferences and seeing what other people are doing and seeing what maybe the next trend might be, seeing if we got into another area of the law, what would that be? Where could we use what we currently do and effectuate change or be able to bring that business on at our firm?
That sounds like maybe you would have worked, again, easy to look back and second guess, but it sounds like you're saying you would have worked on your business rather than in your business a little bit earlier than you started to.
That's a much easier and more succinct way of saying that.
No, I just listen and try to pull out a few nuggets. That's all. But
Good.
So as we wrap up here, Tony, tell the listener out there, what is a book or two that you'd recommend for them?
So I actually don't read a whole lot of books. Law school will whip that love of reading right out of you.
That's funny.
Not
how about a podcast or anybody you follow on social media or any kind of consuming of good content?
I'm pretty boring in that regard.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be dodgy or anything.
Yeah.
I like reading other people's stories. I think maybe that's what I'm most interested in.
Okay.
Whether they're biographies, not historical biographies. I mean,
Sure.
they can be, everyday run of the mill people kind of biographies, but I enjoy reading people's stories. I've always had an interest in, what makes Jamie, what makes, John Doe, and
Sure.
and how you get to that point. So that's if somebody puts a book like that in front of me or a podcast like that in front of me, that's of interest.
What makes Joe Burrow, right?
Exactly.
I'm a Ravens fan, so
That's fine.
we can coexist, right?
Yeah.
So tell me this: I know you've grown financially, and I know you spoke to some freedom that you had kind of built into your personal life because of your wife's health situation and things like that, time freedom. But speak to the listener out there as far as how has financial abundance benefited you in your life?
So it's helped me with maybe some professional anxiety. I know that if there's a downturn here at work, I'll be okay. My staff will be okay. I know that I'll be able to do the things philanthropically that I want to do, whether it's a little bit that I'm able to do now, or it's down the road. When I'm retired, when the firm is, passed on to somebody else, whenever that time is, my hope is that I'll have a certain amount of money set aside that I can use to benefit the lives of others. And then my goal when I pass away is to have money that goes into a trust, which I formed already, that then benefits several charities that I've been a part of most of my life. And that gives me a lot of I feel very good about that. I feel very honored to be able to do that.
Well, I do truly believe that's, for anyone out there, that's how you're going to get satisfaction or truly an abundant life is giving back and serving others. Easy for me to sit here and say this on a podcast, but I do recognize that that's through the stories we've heard on the show so far. From adversity to abundance, really getting to true abundance isn't all about, stockpiling a bunch of cash and sitting on that. It's really more about serving others and making an impact and being a part of something bigger than yourself. You've spoken a couple of times about giving money away or to charities and things like that. Can you drill down on that a little bit more? What are there specific charities that you give to?
So I have a nephew with Down syndrome. My brother's first son has Down syndrome. So an organization that's of great importance to our family, the Sottile family, is the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati. They were such a tremendous help to my brother and his wife when they received their diagnosis. And we've become very, very heavily involved in that organization.
Got it.
My wife, through a personal serendipitous happening, kind of got us involved with a school here in the Loveland, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio area called Ohio Valley Voices, which specializes in teaching deaf children to speak, and kind of guiding them to a life of hearing. That's another organization that I take a great amount of pride in being a part of. And those are two that are very important to me.
Makes sense. Those are two very important ones. That sounds great. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to touch on?
No, this has been certainly a greater spectrum of discussion than I was expecting, and I'm glad that we talked about these things.
Yeah.
I started this by saying I'm an open book, and I think
Sure.
I think that your listeners will be able to see that.
Yeah. I mean, that's there's a lot, especially nowadays with social media and Instagram and everything. It's very easy to think, oh, Tony started this business and he's just killing it, and there's been no ups and downs, no downs, and it's just been all up. And it's just easy to gloss over the struggles and the trials that are real and come with, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, that come with life. So I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing. And as far as, just speak to your client out there again. Who are you looking to serve, and how can they find you online?
So they can find us online through our website, www.sottile.com. I am on social media. I'm a Facebook guy. I'm a LinkedIn guy. So you can look me up that way. Just search for my name. You can find me that way. Our firm is also on LinkedIn and social media, and those contacts probably point. I actually do know they point to me. They point to me, so you can find me that way. We specialize in helping smaller and mid-sized investors. We have institutional clients, but our bread and butter has been and will continue to be the smaller investor group, and that's important to us.
Absolutely. I know you do a lot of bankruptcy work, some foreclosure work when necessary, and evictions if you have to. Looks like from your website, business formation and transactions you can touch on. And now you all do collateral reviews and that kind of thing as well?
We do pre-purchase collateral reviews. For the most part. There's some that we don't really get involved in, and at quick glance we can determine whether or not we're not going to get involved with that. If we know we're able to make the person happy, it depends, I think, a lot on how that collateral review is presented, what that person's goals are. But that is also something that we do pre-petition or pre-purchase collateral reviews.
Got it. Fantastic. Well, Tony, thanks again. This has been, I know, not always easy to talk about some of the trials you've been through, and but we do appreciate you spending your time with us, because even if you have a little more free time than you used to, I know you're still a busy guy, and we do appreciate you spending your time with us and opening up, and congrats on the success. And it just seems like you have a very healthy perspective on things, and we appreciate that. So thanks again, Tony.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And to the listener out there, check out our newly launched website, adversitytoabundance.com. And that 2 is the number 2, adversitytoabundance.com. We're going to start putting all things podcast related on that website. So check that out, and don't forget to share the show. And thanks for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.